Going to begin now, and let me introduce myself first of all. I'm Sarah. I work in the communications team at Carers First, and today is Carers Rights Day. So I'm joining you with our panel. As you can see, there's the three other people on the screen, and we're hosting a special question and answer session today to answer your questions on carers' rights. So if you don't know, Carers Rights Day is an annual awareness day held every year in November, and it focuses on helping carers to know and understand their rights, providing the opportunity for carers to get help and the support they need and are entitled to. So today we're joined by Brian, Debbie and Trina, and they're going to be answering your questions. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions, and we're going to try and cover as many as possible in the time we have. But if we don't cover your specific question and you would like support or help, do contact Carers First, and we'll put the details in the chat or comments now so that you have those details to contact us. I'm going to hand over now and let our panel introduce themselves. So Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name's Brian. I'm the benefit team lead in Lincolnshire. My role is to assist carers in claiming the benefits that they're entitled to help them with forms, to look at different ways to save money like grants, etc. So just in general to help each carer within Lincolnshire and the team with finances as best we can.
Thank you, Brian. Great to have you here. And Debbie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sarah, and hi everyone. I'm Debbie Hustings, and I am a carer myself. I've been caring since the 1980s, but it's absolutely my privilege to serve the London region. I am the NHS England Carers Lead. Thank you, Sarah.
Wonderful, thank you, Debbie. And finally, Trina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Trina. I'm a carer for the last 31 years to a son with schizophrenia. I volunteer for Rethink Mental Illness and run a two group support groups, one for carers and that care for loved ones with mental illness, and the other one an art group for all those that have got mental illness.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Trina, and it's wonderful to have you all joining us today. I can tell obviously we've got a range of experience and knowledge from each of you, so hopefully be able to cover quite a wide range of topics today. And I'm going to kick off straight away, and I'm going to go straight to our first question. Obviously the current situation with the cost of living, I mean, it's unsurprising that we've got a few questions around this, but the first question is, what financial support is available for carers and how do I access it? And Brian, with being our benefits advisor, do you want to handle this one?
Yeah, of course. So there's different benefits a carer can claim. So one of the main or obvious ones is carers allowance. Carers allowance £69.70 a week, and you can claim that for somebody that's in receipt of a disability benefit. There's additional add-ons that you may be able to get with getting carers allowance. So there could be things called like Discount for Carers website, whereby as a carer you can get discount off everyday items, some clothing shops, etc. So it's worth having. And also by having carers allowance may allow you to get discounted rates off attractions or days out. So again, that's worth looking at. To apply for carers allowance is simple compared to a lot of DWP benefits, and you can do that through the gov.uk website. The one thing that I would, the only part of or word of caution in relation to carers allowance, it can affect somebody else's benefits. Sometimes before making a claim, if you have any concerns, to check with the DWP office for the person you're claiming for, i.e. if they're claiming like pension credit, core pension credit, ask if you claim carers allowance, would it affect that person's benefits or any other benefit. Other benefits worth looking at, universal credit can support people if they're having to reduce their hours because of their caring role or their earnings fluctuate quite a lot, and you can use websites such as Entitled To or Turn to Us, which is a really good website. It takes a few minutes, you put in your details, and at the end it just lets you know what the entitlement is. And then there's different disability benefits. So if you're state pension age, there's attendance allowance. If you're under 16, disability living allowance, and for people of working age, personal independence payment. Whenever claiming any disability benefits, I always encourage to do a little bit of research first, just to check the eligibility and see what the criteria is, so that when you do go through the claim process, it makes it a lot simpler. There's different websites out there, so you can the Carers First have recently done a scheme called initiative called Lighten the Load, and there's lots of really helpful and useful information on our website in relation to finances. There's the Turn to Us website, Entitled to websites, government websites. So there's lots of different websites you can use there, and then there's different services. So depending on your age, there may be different charities that can support with benefits, or the Citizens Advice are really good with that. Or if you're looking for something like Universal Credit, there's like Help to Claim team. So there's potentially lots of different support for carers out there, and lots of really good websites. So some of those I've mentioned today is definitely worth looking at. You might be entitled.
That's great. Thank you, Brian. There's so much. I know it can be overwhelming to figure out benefits, financial support, but I guess the key thing is that there is help and information out there. There are organisations, and there's loads of information online to find out more, and tools to help as well, like benefits calculators. That's really helpful. Linked to that question, we've got the second question is actually about attendance allowance. So someone's asked, how long should an attendance allowance request take to get a response?
So attendance allowance, I'd probably say once you've submitted the claim, takes about 8 to 10 weeks. For anybody looking to make an attendance allowance claim, I would always recommend that they contact the DWP attendance allowance request form. You can print one off online. However, if you request the form online, it's date stamped and allows you 6 weeks to complete it, and then starts from the date that you requested the form. Whereas if you print it off, it tends to be lots of sheets of paper and will only start from the day they receive it. Just some little pointers in relation to attendance allowance or any disability benefits that might mean that somebody claims that wasn't going to claim. So one of the questions on the form, particularly early on, is for getting into and out of bed. And early this week, I did a claim for a lady, asked her, can she get into bed? Can she get out of bed? She said yes, which she can do. But she told me earlier that she'd got arthritis in her back and her knee. So she has to massage her knee for several minutes before she gets out of bed. When she gets up, she needs to sit on the bed. When she stands up out of bed, she needs to hold a bit of furniture. Then it takes her a little bit of time to get herself steady. When she gets into bed, she finds it difficult getting comfortable, so has to arrange the pillows in a particular way. So although she can do the task, she does struggle. And if you adopt the same process throughout all of the questions within that form, then it gives you a better chance of having success when you submit the claim. If the claim is turned down, you can ask for a reconsideration, but on the whole, I find attendance allowance really helpful, and a lot of the people that we support are awarded first time.
Great, thank you, Brian. So much information there. Okay, next question I've got here. I'm a full-time carer for my wife, but I also work full-time. My work has been understanding of my situation so far. Do I need to register myself as her primary carer? And if so, how do I do this and with who? So Trina, I don't know if you could help with this one.
Yeah, well, it's good that he actually recognises himself as a carer, because many carers don't class themselves as a carer until a few years down the line. So that's the start. He can register himself with social services or his GP, but to be quite honest, if his wife's getting, if she's with the NHS getting any sort of help, they should already automatically know that, he's a carer, and they should offer a carer's assessment as well and support for them. So it's but it's good that he recognises himself, because I think a lot of the carers, they don't do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think
Can I come in there,
yeah,
Sarah?
absolutely, Debbie, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Trina. I think there is huge benefits for this carer to just go and check that their medical records have been coded. On the 2nd of November, NHS England issued new SNOMED codes around carers. And these are specific banners that come up on your medical records, which are really, really helpful for all health professionals to be able to access. And I think sometimes carers assume that their GPs have coded them because, as Trina says, they should be aware, but actually it doesn't always happen that way. And normally it's an administrative function done by back office people in the practice. So definitely recommend that carer go and check, and if they're not coded, just to ask them to code. It's their right actually to have their records coded.
Yeah. My GP didn't register, but it's also my son's GP. So
yeah, I hear you, Trina. Yeah.
Yeah.
The guidance is really, really helpful, and I can send Sarah that link to share with people. I think that might be beneficial.
Yeah, and we can absolutely do that. That's great. Thank you both. Okay, next question. Are there any fuel allowances for regular hospital appointments? So I don't know, Debbie, could you help with this one?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, especially with the current cost of living crisis, and I have huge sympathy around this, because carers experience such financial hardship, and then on top of that, you know, if they're struggling to afford actually to either attend appointments with their loved ones or as a patient themselves, it's just another hardship for them to endure. I wonder how many, Sarah, of our people on the call today are aware of the healthcare travel cost scheme. Is that something people are familiar with? Okay, so it's quite technical, so forgive me if I read a little bit off script here, but basically, if you're referred to the hospital for treatment or a diagnostic test by your doctor or your dentist or primary care health professional, you may be able to claim a refund on reasonable travel costs, and it's under this scheme that they would do this. Now, you have to meet 3 conditions, so let me share those with you. At the time of your appointment, you or your partner, including civil partners, must receive one of the qualifying benefits or allowance, and I tell you which ones those are, or meet the eligibility criteria for an NHS low-income scheme. I'll talk about that in a minute, Sarah, if I may. You must have a referral from a healthcare professional to a specialist or a hospital for further NHS treatments or tests. And your appointment must be on a separate visit to when the referral was made. So there's quite a lot to unpack there. People will also ask me about children and other dependents. That's an important factor, isn't it? So you can also claim for travel costs for children if you're eligible for any of the benefits and your child has been referred for treatment, and there is a range of conditions. If your child is over 16, they may make their own claim under the low income scheme. Right, that's all quite a bit convoluted, isn't it? And so what I'm going to just talk now about is a little bit about those benefits that make you eligible. So if you're on income support, income-based job seekers allowance, income-related employment and support allowance, working tax credit and child tax credit, disability element or severe disability element, CTC, but you're not eligible for WTC, pension guarantee credit, or you receive universal credit, you'll meet all the criteria for that. Okay, so that's one element. You can also claim help with travel costs if you're named on or entitled to an NHS tax credit exemption certificate. So you would qualify if you get child tax credits, working tax credits. That was WTC. I apologise for talking in acronyms a minute ago. and have income for tax credits purposes of 15,276 or less. Now, there is a whole process to go through. So I think my top tip for the carers on the call would be to find out who your patient advice and liaison officer is, find their office and contact them in your local hospital if you have an appointment and you're concerned about travel expenses, and they will guide you through this process. Now, don't worry if you haven't got entitlement to any of these benefits, because there is a separate scheme called the NHS Low Income Scheme. And patients who are not in receipt of the qualifying benefits but are on low income and whose savings are less than £16,000 may be eligible for assistance with this particular travel expense. So it's quite convoluted. People will then ask, can I get those in advance, or are they paid in arrears? Typically, they are paid in arrears on proof of receipt. And then I think the only other thing to say is that in determining what mode of transport to use to actually travel to that venue, they normally base it on public transport. So it's typically a bus fare, but not exclusively. I don't want to complicate anything any further, but there is something also called the patient transport scheme. And if the person you care for is entitled to patient transport scheme, there is provision made for carers to also attend. So quite complex, Sarah, and probably a webinar in itself.
Absolutely, but loads of information there, Debbie. Thank you. Loads, and like you said, I think to simply, if you are a carer and you are concerned, to speak to the hospital, the staff at the hospital about this, they should be able to support you through getting help or applying for help. So that's really helpful. Debbie, I'm afraid another question for you probably, but I think quite an important one. So should confidentiality of patient records be waived when it puts the patient and their carer at risk of harm, and who should make that decision?
Oh goodness, that really is $1 million question, Sarah. but a great question, and it comes up a lot in particularly in mental health caring scenarios. So perhaps the best place to start with this is with a quote, and this, I think this really sort of sums it up. So this comes from Dr. Mike Shooter, who was the former president of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and he says, good practice is built on partnership, not only between the doctor and the patient, but between the patient and the carer, and between the carer and the doctor. So that triangle of care, many of our mental health carers on the call will be familiar with. Having said that, though, we in the NHS, like everyone else, have to work within the data protection legislation requirements. And the right to confidentiality is always superseded by safeguarding. Okay, so if there is risk and safeguarding is an issue, there is a separate criteria for that. What I would say is the GMC, the General Medical Council, like other health professional bodies, will advocate a common sense approach to confidentiality. And they should recognise that sometimes there is really difficult relationships between confidentiality and information sharing. So when a service user wishes to withhold information, then these wishes have to be respected by the professional staff. And it is essential that you are made aware that this, but as carers, it's essential that you're made aware that this doesn't affect your rights to receive generic information. Okay. Now, what I would say is that if you have concerns as a carer, you will not breach patient confidentiality by talking to the practitioner. Okay, so you can still impart your views and your thoughts with that practitioner, even if the practitioner can't share anything back with you. And that's actually really, really valuable for practitioners to understand. So I I advocate that approach. I think very specifically around this risk of harm, where there is a risk of harm, and sharing appropriate information with you as the carer will alleviate risks. That is a potential scenario where a best interest assessment will be done, where there is another legal authority, i.e. an order of the court, and where the service user is lacking in terms of cognition capacity in relation to information sharing, and it's considered in the best interest for the information to be shared with you. So there are exceptions. So basically, the professionals who are managing the case need to satisfy themselves. It's a best interest test to work with you on that. So it is complex. I appreciate it. And I think what we advocate very much in the NHS is if the service user refuses consent, and there may be multiple reasons why that happens, we still have to consider the impact on the carer. So I'll give you an example of where case law has recently been used. So a doctor treating a patient with Huntington's disease, which clearly has implications for any genetic biological children. And in this particular case, the father made very clear to the GP they did not wish their children to know that he had Huntington's disease. And that case went to law because if you think about it, the children had a right to know that they themselves could potentially be carrying that gene. So it's a very complex area, this, but there is risk to see and to mollify.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
They a lot of the time carers get thrown the confidentiality at them. You know, you sort of you can be your named carer for your loved one, but you ask a question or you make a comment and it's the confidentiality stick comes up right at you, and it's so annoying.
Mm-hmm. Have you had an experience, Trina, or can advise on how to deal with that?
You've got to stand up for your rights. I think I advise all sort of for all loved ones, like for example, I care for my son, and I was advised quite a long time ago by a psychiatrist to get my son to write a letter giving me full sort of details, and I tell all my carers to do that, because that helps a little bit, but you've always got the one that will still go against it. Mm-hmm. And I think that it is difficult, but you know more than you live with that, being a carer, and you have some right. You should have some rights as well.
I would absolutely agree, Trina, and I think it's a really difficult area, because I think if you look at sort of health staff and their training, the focus is entirely on governance. You cannot breach patient confidentiality. But actually, what I'll do as a result of this discussion today is I'll send to Sarah the Common Sense Guide to confidentiality in carers, and I think you will find that very helpful, because you do have rights, Trina. You absolutely have rights to general information, even when the patient themselves has not consented, and you always have the right to speak from your own point of view, even if the practitioner themselves can't actually reply to specific questions.
Yeah. I held my carers meeting last night, and I told them all what I was doing today, and one of them piped up straight away, carers don't have any rights. And I said, yes, we do, but it's all the time. It's just a big barrier.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I think you're right. People don't know they've got rights. They don't know how to they're not empowered to exercise them, are they, Trina?
Got to fight.
So we'll give you the information, and that will help.
Thank you. I think, like you said, it's so important that we have awareness days and sessions like what we're doing right now, so that more carers know that they have rights and also know how they can exercise them, like you say, Debbie, because we don't want them to feel powerless, and they shouldn't. Yeah, really important points there. Thank you both for sharing. We'll move on to the next question now. Okay, so my husband is currently in hospital but due to be discharged soon. I don't feel I have been informed about this decision or what happens next. What rights do I have? So Debbie, I think I'm going to field this one to you again.
No, these are great questions, and actually I'm going to give you a quick history lesson. It's a very recent history lesson. Up to a year ago, carers had rights, but these were actually threatened by the draft Health and Care Bill, which is now the Health and Care Act. They were threatened through Clause 80 of this particular bill, and at the time, Government and Department of Health were seeking to pass legislation around the discharge to access approach, which is the pathway that we use, or the model pathway we use for discharge. And it reflects the Community Care Delayed Discharge Act of 2003. Well, what was very interesting while the bill was being drafted is the government decided in their wisdom that they were going to repeal these particular rights, and as a result of that, a huge campaign was fought with organisations like Carers First and Carers Trust and Carers UK all doing their bit to explain why the government couldn't do this. And there was a load of really good research work, and I will cite Healthwatch England and Carers UK in that, that actually demonstrated that carers' experience of hospital discharge was really, really poor, and actually that, you know, it's worth carers going off and having a look at that. So as a result of that, there was a lot of campaigning, and there was a briefing on this and a great big wake-up call about how we would ensure that we're not dialing back on these rights. And it got all party support, which was incredible. And as a result of that, on the government's own impact assessment, they then came back and said, it's just the most extraordinary phrase, and everyone hang on to your hats when I read this to you. The government decided then in their wisdom that there is an expectation that unpaid carers might like to allocate more time to care for patients who are discharged from hospital earlier. For some, this could require a reduction in work hours and associated financial cost. Well, I think by this time, most of us were close to having a complete meltdown. And so the campaign lobbied even further. And as a result of that, and the cross-party support, we then achieved Section 91 of the Health and Care Act, which extends the 2003 rights that we have, and not only to adult carers, but also for the very first time, bearing in mind I've been working in this field for 20 odd years, it extended it to young carers, which is just fantastic. So that's all now in statutory, and it's a legal obligation. So it's all enshrined in the statutory guidance, carers and hospital community care. So all of that's there. Now, the big issue, Sarah, colleagues and carers on this call, is that how do we operationalise that guidance? How do we put it into practice? So we've now got the law finally on our side, but how do we make that real for carers? So certainly I can tell you what we've done in the London region. We've held 2 really large events, partner forums, bringing everyone together. I think some 400 people have been involved in this, and we've created a carers and hospital discharge toolkit, and we're going to be using that to support our hospitals to implement the ambitions of that statutory guidance. And then, more to the point, part of my role is to seek assurance. So I ensure that there is some accountability around that guidance being put in practice. So it's a good news story, but it probably doesn't feel any different at the moment. It's a work in progress, Sarah.
But I guess the key takeaway from that is that carers do have rights, and even more rights than they had previously around hospital discharge and being informed. So that's a really key thing, and it's a good thing. It's a positive move and going in the right direction. So I think that's a really good thing. Next question I've got here. So how do I talk to someone at work about my caring role? Trina, can you help with this one?
Right. I can sort of relate to myself. I was working, and my son was obviously got schizophrenia, but I tried to keep it to myself. I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want anybody, because people are sort of, there's still the stigma there around mental health. And so I decided in the end that I was only in a small working sort of group. And I sat there and I told my boss, who was now my best friend, you've got to sort of lay it on the line. You've got to think about what you're going to say, perhaps write it down or whatever, but you've got to lay it on the line, because then it helps you because you've talked about it, but it's also helping your workmates, your friends, your family, and everything else. To understand how you feel, and I think that, and if the employer, it depends on where you're working, but your employer should be, hopefully, fingers crossed, very understanding. And a lot of companies now, they do have like a mental health first aid or whatever on site. And so you can, I'd like to think that most people will be able to go to the place of work and talk about it if they need to at that time. And it's just, but it makes so much difference if you talk about it. And I always say it's good to talk, and from then I'm quite open what's wrong with my son, and about all mental illness. And you've got to stand up for yourself and make the general public aware.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah. I think a lot of the the worry is about potentially being treated differently, or if you do tell your employer or anything like that. And I think it's key to remember that carers are, you're protected from discrimination. You can't be discriminated against at work, and that is your right. So I think there are, if you do open up and you tell your employer, which we encourage, because then you can get support and understanding in your caring role alongside your working role. If you don't find you've got that support and you actually find the opposite, they are breaking the law, and you have rights that protect you from that. So I think it's always worth bearing that in mind if you are a carer, because telling your employer about it, and no one else needs to know as well. You don't have to tell colleagues, but telling your employer, they could could really make a difference, because we know so many carers struggle to balance work and caring. So I think that's really key.
I think sometimes if you're feeling low at work, and colleagues and everybody at work do understand, then it's better for you and them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think as well, it's worth considering, especially if you work in a large organisation, there may be other people who are carers and can support each other. I know at Carers First we have, obviously we are a charity supporting carers, but a lot of our team are carers themselves, and I think we all have that understanding and support of each other. Of that. I
think most charity, like Rethink, they're very understanding of their workforce and everything.
Thanks, Trina. Okay, coming on to our final question now. So I'm feeling overwhelmed and exhausted with my caring role. Who can help me? Trina, do you want to Can happen?
Yeah, caring can be very difficult, very very strenuous on yourself, and I think you should, well, you can try to talk to your GP or any other team that your loved one is under, you know, like for myself, a GP and a consultant or whatever, try to talk to them. But it's difficult. But I mean, and carers groups. I'm a great, you know, I've been going to a carers group for 20 odd years, and I couldn't have survived without it. You learn more from other carers than you do the professionals. That's in my sort of understanding of it. Carers groups can understand, you can signpost, you're all in the same boat. They all understand where you're coming from. And it's, they listen, and you listen to, you know, job logs next to you sort of thing, and talking, and you think, oh yeah, I went through that. And, you know, it all works together, and you can learn so much from each other, and the support is tremendous. So yeah, you're talking about it. And as well, I think there's, you know, like organizations like yourselves and other charities, they've all got sort of ways.
Is Trina frozen for everyone else?
Yeah, all frozen.
Yes, she has, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was just me, and I didn't want to interrupt. Just in case we have lost Trina, I'll leave her on screen in case she comes back. But Debbie or Brian, is there anything else you know, based on your own experiences, either working with carers or being a carer yourself, anything you can add to that about, you know, carers just feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, and who can help them? What can they do?
You know, I've been in that place so time, and I mean, you know, loneliness and caring are synonymous, aren't they? And I have found during that time that the help from my local carers support organisation from other carers have really made the difference to me. I've also, I'm lucky because I work for the NHS, and we have staff carer networks, so we can meet together and, you know, really provide that mutual support. But what I would say is, if you're feeling that almost despair, which I know many carers do, don't suffer alone. Please go to your GP and at least start that ball rolling, because once people know, there are often lots of different places and avenues that you can get help, but do ask for it. You know, that's the courage to ask for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with what Debbie said. You know, there's lots of groups out there for people that need them, that you can just go along to, with people with similar or same caring roles as yourself, and by just having somebody else to talk to that understands what you're going through can really help. So it's worth looking out for those.
Absolutely. I've just seen, just linked to that as well, someone pop up and chat and say, you know, there's some carers who are older or just don't have access to the internet, and it's not all reliant on the internet. At Carers First, we have a helpline so people can call. We have face-to-face groups and support. There's also like befriending services, so people can give carers a call. So, you know, just because the carer may not be online for whatever reason, may not, you know, or not just not be, you know, not want to be, for example, not want that virtual sort of service, there is someone you can actually talk to on the phone, or, you know, have those support, you know, face-to-face groups as well. So I think, you know, don't think it's all limited to online. If you are struggling in your caring role, there are plenty of other help available where you can actually speak to someone. I think we've lost Trina, which is a shame because I wanted to thank her, but we're going to sort of start to close the session now. Brian or Debbie, is there any final thoughts from either of you?
Oh, well, sorry, Brian, you go. I'm talking.
No, you go. That's fine.
No. I was just seeing some questions in the chat, and I wanted to say to Chris Oakley, yeah, you absolutely have right. If there's an emergency appointment, you can go and join it. That's not actually under your carer's rights, but that's under your dependent's rights in emergency. So I just wanted to share that. And Morna was asked about John's campaign. What I'll do, Morna, is I'll send some information for you to Sarah. But it's about the right to be able to be with your loved ones in hospital when they're hospitalized. But I'll leave that for another day. Sorry, Brian.
No, nothing really. So just for those that have messaged me within the chat, I've got back to you. So if anyone's got any other questions, just let me know. And the other thing is, please look at the Carers First website. There's lots of good information that might be useful for people in relation to benefits, grants, etc. And there is lots of help out there. And if you're unsure, contact ourselves or people within your local area. There might be support that you didn't think you'd be entitled to.
Wonderful. I'm just thank you both. I'm just hoping. Yes, Trina's joined us.
I don't know what happened then. It just went.
we hopefully caught everything, Trina. But I'm so pleased you could join us because we're just finishing off now. And that you obviously answered the final question, but we're just finishing off. I wanted to thank you all for joining us. I know this is so many carers will find this very helpful. If there has been things that have been discussed, like Debbie has said, we'll make sure that they're all available, as well as the recording of this session as well. So if you'd like to share this with other carers or colleagues, whoever, we'll make this available later on today at carersfirst.org.uk/Carers Rights Day. We'll make the link to this recording available on there. Thank you to everyone who joined us. We know as carers, your time is precious, so really appreciate your time. We hope you found this useful. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of Carers Rights Day, and bye for now.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. Thanks, Trina.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.